Okay, now who is this?
This is me with our oldest son, Eli. He was about age 5. This is taken in Nigeria right after having taken the Washington, D.C. bar exam.
Okay, but this doesn't really look like a Martine.
Right, that was myself as a male, the way I was brought up, and before I transitioned from male to female and Martin to Martine.
You were brought up Martine Rothblatt.
Correct.
And about a year after this picture, you married a beautiful woman. Was this love at first sight? What happened there?
It was love at the first sight. I saw Bina at a discotheque in Los Angeles, and we later began living together. But the moment I saw her, I saw just an aura of energy around her. I asked her to dance. She said she saw an aura of energy around me. I was a single male parent. She was a single female parent. We showed each other our kids' pictures, and we've been happily married for a third of a century now.
And at the time, you were kind of this hotshot entrepreneur working with satellites. I think you had 2 successful companies. Okay, now, this is your gorgeous daughter, Genesis. And I guess she was about this age when something pretty terrible happened.
Yes, she was finding herself unable to walk up the stairs in our house to her bedroom. And after several months of doctors, she was diagnosed to have a rare, almost invariably fatal disease called pulmonary arterial hypertension.
So how did you respond to that?
Well, we first tried to get her to the best doctors we could. We ended up at Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. The head of pediatric cardiology told us that he was going to refer her to get a lung transplant, but not to hold out any hope because there are very few lungs available, especially for children. He said that all people with this illness died. And if any of you have seen the film Lorenzo's Oil, there is a scene when the protagonist kind of rolls down the stairway crying and bemoaning the fate of his son. And that's exactly how we felt about Genesis.
But you didn't accept that as the limit of what you could do. You started trying to research and see if you could find a cure somehow.
Correct. She was in intensive care ward for weeks at a time. And Bina and I would tag team to stay at the hospital while the other watched the rest of the kids. And when I was in the hospital and she was sleeping, I went to the hospital library. I read every article that I could find on pulmonary hypertension. I had not taken any biology even in college, so I had to go from like a biology textbook to a college level textbook and then medical textbook and the journal articles, back and forth. And eventually I knew enough to think that it might be possible that somebody could find a cure. So we started a nonprofit foundation. I wrote a description of asking people to submit grants, and we would pay for medical research. I became an expert on the condition. A doctor said to me, Martine, we really appreciate all the funding you've provided us, but we are not going to be able to find a cure in time to save your daughter. However, there is a medicine that was developed at the Wellcome Trust, Burroughs Wellcome Company, that could halt the progression of the disease, but Burroughs Wellcome has just been acquired by Glaxo Wellcome. They made a decision not to develop any medicines for rare and orphan diseases, and maybe you could use your expertise in satellite communications to develop this cure for pulmonary hypertension. They weren't going to send the drug out to anybody at all, and they thought I didn't have the expertise. Finally, I was able to persuade a small team of people to work with me and develop enough credibility. I wore down their resistance, and they had no hope this drug would even work, by the way. And they tried to tell me, you're just wasting your time, we're sorry about your daughter. But finally, for $25,000 and agreement to pay 10% of any revenues we might ever get, they agreed to give me worldwide rights to this drug.
And so you put this drug on the market in a really brilliant way. by basically charging what it would take to make the economics work, right?
Oh, yes, Chris, but this really wasn't a drug that I ended up getting after I wrote the check for $25,000 and I said, okay, where's the medicine for Genesis? They said, well, Martine, there's no medicine for Genesis. This is just something we tried in rats. And they gave me like a little plastic Ziploc bag of a small amount of powder. They said, don't give it to any human. And they gave me a piece of paper which said it was a patent. And from that, we had to figure out a way to make this medicine. 100 chemists in the US at the top universities all swore that little patent could never be turned into a medicine. If it was turned into a medicine, it could never be delivered because it had a half-life of only 45 minutes.
And yet, you, a year or two later, you were there with a medicine that worked for Genesis.
Chris, the astonishing thing is that this absolutely worthless piece of powder that had the sparkle of a promise of hope for Genesis is not only keeping Genesis and other people alive today, but produces almost $1.5 billion a year in revenue.
And the best news of all, I guess, is this.
Yes, Genesis is an absolutely brilliant young lady. She's alive, healthy today at 30. You see me being in Genesis there. She's the most amazing thing about Genesis is that while she could do anything with her life, and believe me, if you grow up your whole life telling with people in your face, saying that you've got a fatal disease, I would probably run to like Tahiti and just not want to run into anybody again. But instead, she chooses to work in United Therapeutics. She says she wants to do all she can to help other people with orphan diseases get medicines. And today, she's our project leader for all telepresence activities, where she helps digitally unite the entire company to work together to find cures for pulmonary hypertension.
It's not just long-lasting bodies that are of interest to you now, it's long-lasting minds. And I think, like, this graph for you says something quite profound. What does this mean?
What this graph means, and it comes from Ray Kurzweil, is that the rate of development in computer processing, hardware, firmware, and software has been advancing along a curve such that by the 2020s, as we saw in earlier presentations today, there will be information technology that processes information and the world around us at the same rate as a human mind.
And so that being so, you're actually getting ready for this world by believing that we will soon be able to, actually take the contents of our brains and somehow preserve them forever. How do you describe that?
Well, Chris, what we're working on is creating a situation where people can create a mind file. And a mind file is the collection of their mannerisms, personality, recollection, feelings, beliefs, attitudes, and values, everything that we pour today into Google, into Amazon, into Facebook. And all of this information stored there will be able, in the next couple decades, once software is able to recapitulate consciousness, be able to revive the consciousness which is immanent in our mind file.
Now, you're not just messing around with this, you're serious. I mean, who is this?
This is a robot version of my beloved Spice Bina, and we call her Bina 48.
Sure. Let me think. Oh, yeah. I do love gardening. I like to beautify. I want to leave the world a more beautiful place for my presence in it.
Well, one day you can go blueberry picking with me.
Do you think I can?
I think so.
Fair enough. Let's continue. Can we talk about movies?
The next step is what my colleague and good friend Luan described so well earlier, is to modify the pig genome. Why the pig? It's because the shape and the function of its organs are the best match for humans, and because there's no shortage of pigs and they have large litters. So it's all very practical matters. to modify the pig genome so that those things that make pig organs intolerable to the human being or dangerous to the human being can be chiseled and stripped away, and what you end up having is basically a biological hip replacement, if you want, flying quotes, because it's not a hip, but it's like a hip replacement. Americans eat 100 million pigs a year. So even if we had everybody with end-stage heart disease get a xeno heart, it would be only 1 million pigs out of 100 million, still plenty of bacon left for everybody.
Plenty of pigs to go around.
And then finally, the ultimate stage is we are 3D printing the scaffold for an organ and then cellularizing that scaffold with inducible pluripotent stem cells. That's a fancy word for saying your own cells that have been taken out from apheresis from your own bloodstream and modified to be either the cardiac cell or the type of cells that would be needed for a liver or a kidney, to recellularize this scaffold that has been 3D printed of collagen. Collagen, by the way, is throughout our bodies. Oftentimes, the more the merrier. And then have an unlimited supply of transplantable organs, the DNA of which is a custom fit to you because it's your same DNA. That'll be available by the 2030s, and the xenotransplantation option will be available by the 2020s.
One controversy that comes up is that people say, well, it's fine to fix problems. Bill McKibben said this. Disease, disabilities, it's fine to overcome these kinds of limitations, but we shouldn't go beyond normal human capabilities. Not that that's a sharply defined limit, but what's your view about that particular controversy?
We need to always go beyond normal human capabilities because that's our nature as human beings. Human beings are the species that transcend their limitations. It's wonderful that we do because thanks to those transcendence of our limitations, we now have beautiful music, amazing art, we're able to travel the globe, we're able to relieve pain and suffering for millions of people. One more limitation is the unfortunate loss of all of an individual's knowledge and goodness with the degradation of their body. If there was no other way to avoid it, we'd have to accept it. And that's what all of religion has been about for the past several millennium, is teaching us to accept that. Thanks to science and technology, we're now at the cusp of transcending that limitation. And it's nothing to be fearful for. It's something we should grab for with both arms and welcome the transcendence of this last human limitation, the limitation of illness, disability, and death.
Now, one argument I hear is people say death is a good thing because it frees up opportunities for the younger generation to provide leadership and creativity. And Bill McKibben said, if Mozart was still alive today, he'd be in charge of the conservatories and would keep out new ideas in music.
One of the most important reasons for us to transcend death is because of the beauty that we can share with grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and further down the line. There is a love between grandparents and grandchildren that cannot be matched. And unfortunately, we begin to lose this with great-grandchildren and great-grandchildren because we don't live long enough. There are so many things that we can teach those children that they can teach us. Intergenerational love is one of the most beautiful forms of love. And by transcending death, we will empower an explosion of intergenerational love. I like trying to pursue the three bridges of radical life extension, which are, first of all, to use supplementation to try to reprogram aspects of my body which are degrading, and then secondly, to do all that I can to pave the way forward for biotechnology and nanotechnology to extend our lives yet further, and then finally to pursue full mind uploading to ensure that we have freedom from whatever the happenstance may occur to a single body. I think it's really important to get to the point of one mind, multiple bodies as rapidly as possible.